You ready? Okay. Johnny, we on, did you say? We're good? Okay. Good morning. Welcome, Powerful Moment Sunday School class. Thank you for remembering to bunch up today. So we'll just continue to bunch up, and hopefully we'll have some visitors to come and see that we're all bunched up. Yeah. Martha says it's closed communion. Is your mic not working?
That is now.
Okay, it is now. Good. Linda gave me a report on Mary Finch shortly ago. Does everybody have a handout? Anybody need a handout from this morning? Okay. Help me if somebody comes in to remember to ask them for if they need a handout. Linda reported that Mary Finch is better, right? Doing better. Is that correct? That her daughter told you? Is it a daughter that told you that? Her daughter told you that, and that there's a possibility she'll move to the pavilion here in Lebanon at some point near future. Tomorrow. Oh, wow. Okay. Possibility then that she'll move even tomorrow to the pavilion. So she'll be here close by that we can be more convenient for us to stop by and visit with her there. Great. Okay. Other announcements this morning. We have a deacon ordination in the worship service this morning, so that will be a great time to recognize a new deacon, a new servant in that role. Okay. Anything else? Mm-hmm. Quentin Smith passed away this week. Mark says he was the director of the Ag Center. So, young guy in his 60s, right? Yeah. Mm. Mm. Yeah, wow. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Mark, anything else this morning? Oh, the prayer book. It's going around somewhere. Cindy, I'd already blamed Cindy.
Right
Martha has already blamed Cindy for me forgetting to pass the prayer book around last Sunday because she was not here, and that's her official duty is to make sure that happens. And now she's making sure that happens. So thank you, Cindy. All right, anything else? Good, well, congratulations to Brian Blades. Got married last week, so that's all done now, and the happy couple is off to somewhere, right? So good for them. Okay. All right, who feels like opening us in prayer this morning then? All right, Ken, thank you. And thank you. And so we're going to be in Genesis chapter 21 today, verses 22 through 34. And Sandra, there's a new handout for this week. Got one back there? Okay, good. So with that, Martha, if you would read Genesis chapter 21, verse 22 to start us off.
Now it came about at that time that Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, spoke to Abraham, saying, God is with you in all that you do.
All right, so in this verse, a character appears again to whom we were introduced to earlier in our study of Genesis. Who's this character that we see again? Abimelech. He was the king of Philistine or Palestine of the Philistines, and we're not sure if that was his name Abimelech or if that's a title like Pharaoh. But there's someone with him this time. Who is with Abimelech? Who's that? Philco. And what was Philco's position? He's commander of the Philistine army. So what was the situation when we talked about or learned about Abimelech in our earlier study? When did we get to know him? What was going on? What's that? Abimelech? No, not Ruth. Just earlier in Genesis here. Yeah. Abraham had introduced Sarah to Abimelech as his sister rather than his wife. So Abraham had told a half-truth or a whole lie to Abimelech. So as a result of this deception by Abraham, what happened during that time, during that story? What else happened? Somebody's going to say something. Yes, ma'am, Becky. Okay. So Becky cut right to the chase, and so Sarah was taken into Abimelech's harem as such, and Abimelech had a dream that revealed that Sarah was Abraham's wife. Abimelech then, as Becky said, returned Sarah to Abraham, and he also gave Abraham a bunch of sheep and cattle and female slaves and 1,000 pieces of silver upon the return of Sarah. But at the same time, before this happened, God had afflicted Abimelech's household and his servants. How did he afflict them? What happened? Couldn't have children. So Abimelech's wives and his servants, they couldn't have children. So, excuse me. So, as part of this, we learned too the first time that the term prophet is used in the Bible. It referred to Abraham, so that's the first time that word was used in the Bible. And so Abraham's identified as a prophet, and he prayed to God, and by praying to God, it brought healing to Abimelech's wives and to his servants, and so they were then again able to have, and even his livestock, they were all again able at that point again to have offspring. So Genesis 21:22 says, at that time, what time was that time? Yeah, Jeff. Yeah. After Ishmael is, Jeff says, kicked out of the family, after Sarah tells Abraham that Ishmael and Hagar have to go, and God confirms that they have to go. So this, we thought, this began with the big weaning party that was going on for Isaac, and we think at that day and time that when the weaning party went on, that Isaac would have been about 3 years old. So this is probably 3 or 4 years now have passed since the last experience that Abimelech had with Abraham. So to me, this is a little bit of a strange incident to be recorded here, because this incident is brought up, as Jeff just said, between the middle of Isaac's birth, the conflict and that happened at Isaac's weaning party, and then on the other side of this incident, it tells us of the account the sacrifice or potential sacrifice of Isaac. So it's interesting that this reoccurrence of Abimelech occurs at this point in the account of Genesis. So Abimelech and I said Phicol. How'd you pronounce his name?
Philco.
Philco came and said, I see God in all that you do. Speaking of Abraham, he says, I see God in all that you, Abraham, do. So how did Abimelech know that God was with Abraham in all that he did? How had Abimelech seen God in what Abraham did? He had a Nancy says he had a dream. Abimelech had a dream about the situation with Sarah. Yeah. What else? Could see Abraham's wealth. He was a wealthy guy, so Abimelech could surmise that maybe God had blessed Abraham physically through wealth. Yeah.
Well, they started having children, and that was all of that was resolved.
Yeah. After Abraham prayed, they were able to have Abimelech's wives and the household could have children. So he certainly could see him that way. So he could see the result of intercessory prayer on Abraham's part. So, anything else? Say it again, Jeff. Yeah. Yeah. So Abimelech could have been watching Abraham for some period of time and saw the miracle, the supernatural birth of Isaac, that at the ages of Abraham and Sarah, they had this child, and Abimelech could have known that prior to that possibly that he had known that Sarah was barren. Okay. Anything else? I suspect Abimelech had kind of been watching Abraham, kind of keeping tabs on him, somewhat to what Ken said, that he had a lot of wealth, and we'll see what else might have run through Abimelech's mind as we dig on into this, but he probably, being his neighbor, kind of kept an eye on Abraham just to see what he's up to on this time. But what a great thing, or a great compliment Abimelech pays to Abraham. I see God in all that you do. Wouldn't that be a great compliment to receive? I see God in all that you do. And, maybe it'd be a great compliment to see, for somebody to say, I see God in just something you do. But here he says, in all that Abraham did, that Abimelech saw God. All right, let's move on here to Genesis chapter 21, verse 23. Martha, if you would read that.
So now swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me, or with my offspring, or with my descendants, but according to the kindness that I have shown to you, you shall show to me and to the land in which you have resided.
All right, so why would Abimelech have said, and here he says, swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me? Why would Abimelech have made that statement to Abraham? Yeah, he says, Ken said that he just said, I see God in all that you do, but Abimelech knew the history of what had transpired before, that Ken says that he also knew that Abraham could be a cheat, that he could deal falsely, that he could be deceptive. So, because Abraham, again, remember, he had lied to Abimelech before that Sarah was his sister, not telling the complete truth. The other thing, getting back, what Ken said earlier too, was Abimelech's keeping an eye on Abraham. If you remember, he's got a lot of wealth. As part of that wealth, he has a trained army. And that army, at the point that we learned he had an army, consisted of 300 trained, we might say, elite forces at that time. They went and rescued Lot at that time from King, and I'm sure I'm saying this wrong, Kedorlaomer, that's probably wrong. And there were several kings with him, and Abraham went and rescued Lot, chased these kings for hundreds of miles away, and returned Lot to back to their homestead as such. So Abimelech could have been concerned about Abraham's military capabilities as well.
Do you think he brought the commander of the army kind of as an intimidation?
So I think, yes, possibly Philco was there. If for nothing else, he might have been out there scouting out what's going on, or he could be there to just kind of give Abraham a heads up, I've got an army too, or for whatever reason. But it doesn't specifically say why Philco was there, but that it makes some sense that he had him there for a purpose in this interchange. So I think there are two theorems that maybe we can take away from this. First is, if someone lies to you on one occasion, beware, they may lie to you again. Very possibly, they may lie to you again. So just a practical theorem. The second is, if someone lies to you in a small thing, not saying Sarah was Abraham's half-sister was a small thing, or saying that Sarah was his sister was a small thing, but if someone lied to you in a small thing, again, beware. There's a good possibility they'll lie to you in a big thing. Is that me making a noise? I'm sorry. So just a couple of theorems there for just practical purposes you might keep in mind. So yeah. Nancy says that theorem number 3 is that she didn't say theorem number 3, but theorem number 3 could be that it's more than likely, or possibly, somebody will lie to you, they'll also cheat you, they'll also steal from you. So beware of that. Good theorem 3. Okay. So has someone who doesn't know Christ ever requested something of you because God seems to be with you? If so, what did they request? Prayer. A lot of times, sometimes people that think you are spiritual, you know God, they will request, even if they're not believers, will request you to pray for them or pray for something. Nancy, you're going to say something? Well, we're going to start a lot. Nancy always has good examples. Here we go, Nancy.
I used to teach English as a second language to international adults. There were a number of Muslims in the class. Before the class would start, they knew it was my custom to have a prayer. So some of the Muslims, when I would do that, would turn their chair around and face the wall to let me know they didn't believe in the same God I did. Mm-hmm. But one of them one day called me with a problem she had in her family. She never would have said this in class when the other Muslims were present, but she said that she knew that I talked to God, and would I pray for her? And I said, yes, I will pray for you. And then there was silence, and she said, well, I'm listening. Mm. And so I prayed with her.
Neat. That's a good reminder for us. A lot of times, I'm more guilty of this, I'm sure, than any of you, but sometimes instead of saying, we'll pray for you, instead of saying, I'll pray for you, say, let me pray for you right now, and do it then instead of, and I'm sure people will do it later. I'm not saying you don't, but it's maybe more meaningful. It is more meaningful, I think, to do it then rather than saying I will. Then go ahead at that time. This Nancy. Mm. Nancy said when she had finished praying, the lady was crying, and Nancy asked her what was wrong, and she said, I never heard my name mentioned in a prayer before. So it'd be interesting to know what went on with her later. Do you know if any? So the Muslim lady could see God in Stan, who gave the blessing when they came for meals and so forth. So what a compliment to Stan. Yeah. Glory to God. Yeah, certainly. Any other times that you see, particularly unbelievers, making request of you? Prayer maybe is the most frequent, certainly. Hopefully sometime an unbeliever may have requested you to lead them in salvation. How do I come to know God? And they give you the opportunity to share that with an unbeliever. Sometimes maybe it's more, I don't want to say practical, but maybe it's more practical. Maybe they've got a problem they're dealing with in their lives, and they see your life and know that you're close to God, and they just seek advice, seek direction, seek input on a problem they may have. So hopefully all of those things are happening with us in our lives that unbelievers may be or have been seeking out some of that in our lives. So, all right, so even though Abimelech and how'd you say his name again? I'm sorry. I keep wanting to say Phicol.
Well, you're probably right. Yeah, I think you're right.
Oh, okay. And Phicol then, even though Abimelech and Phicol saw God in everything that Abraham did, they were still wanting Abraham to swear to them that he would not deal falsely with them. What's that say about the impact of our prior behavior on in people's lives? Mark says they see our actions more than our words. In what way, Mark, in this particular case? Yeah. Yeah. Abimelech, Mark's basically saying, I think Abimelech is thinking or has not forgotten the previous interaction with Abraham. So his prior behavior has affected his current witness. Abraham's prior behavior has affected his current witness to Abimelech. When he asked him to swear to me what, about this situation. Yeah, that's a good point. Mark says he might have brought Phicol with him because Phicol could very well be the trusted advisor to Abimelech. So he knew some of the history and could give Abimelech good advice, possibly in this situation. So there in verse 23 of Genesis 21, Abimelech is seeking an agreement, a covenant with Abraham. So on what is Abimelech asking this agreement, a covenant, to be based?
On the kindness that he's shown him.
On the kindness that Abimelech had previously shown Abraham. He says, but according to the kindness I have shown to you. And the word kindness is the Hebrew word he said. And we talked about this word he said, H-E-S-E-D, some in a prior lesson to some extent. Do you remember where we first saw this word he said and what the situation was? Now, Genesis chapter 19, verse 19, it says, your servant Lot, your servant, does say Lot, your servant, meaning Lot, has found favor in your eyes. When it says your eyes, it's referring to the angels that were sent to Sodom. And you, the angels, have shown great kindness, great, he said, to me in sparing my life, in sparing Lot's life. So the first time we see this word he said in the Bible is in relationship to the kindness shown by the angels to Lot. The website Bible Study Tool says the word he said occurs over 250 times in the Old Testament. So what would you consider as just kind of, in today's society, an act of kindness? No acts of kindness? I mean, not a trick question. Jeanette says anything that you do is kind. So what's some things you do that are kind? You take them food and you do what, Jeanette? Do extra things for them. You know, I think certainly taking food is kind of a trade. What's that, Kim? A Baptist thing. You're taking some fried chicken, so yeah. So yeah, take them food. What else? Yeah. Anything that you can do to help them clean their house, whatever. What's that, Linda? Linda has one. Help someone when their battery goes dead. I think Roger may have a specific incident of that. Linda, did you have one? Were you saying one, Linda? No. So Linda's saying floors is not on her list to do anymore, nor windows, right? So
Visits.
visits, yeah, visits are an act of kindness. How about just opening the door for someone? That's an act of kindness. You don't see that as much anymore as you used to years ago. So some very simple things can be acts of kindness that we would see in today's society as such. We would consider acts of kindness. Please and thank you to an extent are acts, saying please and thank. Yeah. Jeanette says that's part of the parents' responsibility is teaching those things about opening doors and saying please and thank you. Yes, Becky. Yeah. Yeah. No, they do. I just don't, it's not as routine as it used to be. Uh, I noticed that holding elevator doors for ladies now, the lady, if you do that, is a little bit more surprised. And they typically say thank you, but they're not necessarily looking for that to happen today, like maybe it would have been some number of years ago. But just little things that are acts of kindness. But here, in this situation, when we're looking at this word "he said" has much deeper, greater meaning of kindness than what we might think of in terms of simple acts of kindness today. What we're talking about here, these angels spared Lot and some of his family from total destruction. And they refer to that as "he said." So that is an act of kindness. That's a pretty big thing when you're sparing a family from destruction. The website Got Questions says many biblical words such as mercy, compassion, love, grace, and faithfulness relate to the Hebrew word "he said." But none of these completely summarize the concept. He said is not merely an emotion or feeling, but involves action on behalf of someone who is in need. He said describes a sense of love and loyalty that inspires merciful and compassionate behavior toward another person. So he said is an action, and it involves merciful and compassionate behavior. So here, that is what Abimelech is asking Abraham to base this covenant on the kindness, on the "he said" that he had shown Abraham previously. All right, so yeah, yeah, yeah. Good point, Mark. He's saying a simple way to show kindness today is an encouraging word. And a simple way to show kindness today is a smile. And people moving to the south generally from the north note that people are more friendly, they're more smiling, they're more open. So it's just again, maybe the culture, a little difference in culture, but those are acts of kindness that are taught from, I think Jeanette said, that the parents have taught children and hopefully continue to teach. It's a byproduct of sweet tea, Mark says. Okay, good. Martha, pass her that's going to be good, yeah.
I can't exactly remember where we went to, New York, Minnesota, or somewhere, out where we were not used to. And it was a conference, and we were all sitting there. So every time that we would have a break, get a break, our table was just crowded with people. They'd come, and they'd stand around our table. And so when he got the one that was giving the seminar, he said, "I want for all of you to notice something." He said, "Who do you gather? Why do you all go together around these three women right here?" He said, "Their table is always full." And, he told them, he said, "They draw people to you because they show, that they like you." And they say, they say they're always smiling and they're open to everything. And I thought that was the best compliment, so I just...
Demonstrating, he said.
He said. I
Good
didn't know that
example.
was the word, but anyway,
Good
it was
example.
good.
Used to, this doesn't have anything to lesson, but used to when we go to New York and I'd get on an elevator and if we were talking, they'd all just make fun of my accent. So that wasn't very nice, was it?
I also remember when we'd go to New York a lot, we'd walk down the street and people were just, they wouldn't even look at you and they would not smile. It was just, they were busy. But we went one time with Catherine when she was in a baby buggy in a stroller. And we walked down the street, and people would look down at her and smile. And that was just kind of a different thing, experience for us because that had never happened before. Yeah.
Yeah. Children bring out the best in people, hopefully, most of the time. Yeah.
Oh, I don't have.
All right, so here we see this concept of he said being used between a believer, Abraham, and a non-believer, Abimelech. Why do you think this concept of he said is used here?
Well, he'd given him some of everything that he had, probably, his money, his sheep, his goats, it was an expression of respect and kindness. So, money.
Abimelech had given him a lot of gifts, parting gifts, when he sent him away with Sarah. So, I think Beth Moore has a good answer to this. She says, or believes the reason is to teach the unknown through the known. To teach the unknown through the known. We can understand through this human loyalty to an agreement. This concept of this agreement based on human loyalty begins to help us understand the verse 2 Timothy chapter 2 verse 13, which says, if we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. If we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny himself. So this concept of he said between Abraham and Abimelech is trying to help us maybe fathom the concept of being faithful and loyal. Whereas Abraham had not shown loyalty, honesty to Abimelech, here we can see, though, that Abraham's life is changing. Abimelech asked this agreement to be based upon his word. Swear to me, he says. So here we see this concept is first shown by this unbeliever, that we can see that God remains faithful and loyal. God honors his promises. Even though we're faithless, even though Abraham was faithless, God is faithful to us believers and even to unbelievers. So along these same lines, with this concept, God sent his Son so that we might identify with the amazing, incomprehensible gift of love, faithfulness, he said, kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Jamie reminds us that God had first shown Abimelech, he said, kindness, because God said, you have relationships with Sarah, I'm killing you and all your wives and servants and everybody, animals, everything's going to be destroyed. So he was showing him, he said, in that he gave Abimelech a way out. And God gives us a way out. His name is Jesus, right? So when I was writing this some time ago, I don't know why it came to mind. It wasn't Christmas time. It's not Christmas time now, but it kind of reminded me of the story that, oh gosh, what's his name now? I have to look back here. Oh, Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey tells about the birds and the guy shooing the birds into the barn. Y'all remember that? How'd that story? Somebody help me. How's the story go? What's the scenario? Does anybody remember that story? Becky doesn't remember it. So let me start it, and y'all help me as I go. So this guy it's a snowy, cold night. It's Christmas Eve, and his wife and children invite him to go to Christmas Eve services at church, but he declines. So he's going to stay at home. He didn't want to go for whatever reason. So he's at home, and he is there, and he looks out his window in this cold, snowy night, and he sees all these birds. And these birds look like they're hungry, they're homeless, they don't have a place to go. So he's going to try to go out and help the birds. And so he goes out, tries to gather the bird. I'm cutting the story short, but gather the birds up. And he's got this barn. He says, now, if I can only get these birds into this barn, then they'll be safe and warm in my barn. So he goes out and he tries to shoo these birds into the barn, but they won't go into the barn. So he says to himself, if only I was a bird, then they could relate to me, and they would know what I'm telling them, and they would go into the barn. And about that time, the church bells ring. It's midnight. It's Christmas Day is beginning, and it hits him all of a sudden. He says, that's why Christ came to earth. That's why Christ showed kindness to come to earth, he said, to come to earth, so that we as people could identify with him as a person. So here we see this concept of he said being demonstrated between Abraham and Abimelech. So just a kind of random thought. I have random thoughts there, but that came to mind thinking about this concept of he said. So with that, Martha, read verses 24 through 32 of Genesis 21.
Abraham said, I swear it. But Abraham complained to Abimelech because of the well of water which the servants of Abimelech had seized. And Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, nor did I hear of it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two of them made a covenant. But Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. Then Abimelech said to Abraham, What do these 7 ewe lambs mean, which you have set by themselves? And he said, You shall take these 7 ewe lambs from my hand, so that it may be a witness for me that I dug this well. Therefore he called the place Beersheba, because there the two of them took an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba, and Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, got up and returned to the land of the Philistines.
All right, thank you, Martha. So in these verses, what is Abraham's response to Abimelech's proposed agreement? What's he say? I swear it. So in this, I find it interesting in the earlier interaction between Abraham and Abimelech, Abraham's word was not so good, was it? He had told Abimelech that Sarah was his sister, which was deceptive. So what has changed that now Abimelech seems to be willing to accept Abraham's word? What changed? Look at Genesis 21:22. What's it say? What's it say? Cindy has it. Nope, I'm sorry. I thought, Cindy, you were looking like you had it. I'm sorry. Genesis 21:22. What's it say?
God is with you in all that
I
you do.
see God in all that you do. God is with you. So between this last experience between Abraham and Abimelech, and now Abimelech clearly sees in Abraham, I see God in all that you do. So Abraham's testimony has become much more powerful, more stronger in these intervening times that evidently Abimelech sees something different in him. So after Abraham gives his word, after Abraham gives Abimelech his word, Abraham raises an issue. What's the issue that Abraham raises with Abimelech? Water rights. This is a big issue where they're living. They're living in a dry, arid land, so water rights is very important. So with that, what was going on between the two groups of servants of Abraham and Abimelech? Yeah, so Abraham was accusing Abimelech's servants of really blocking the well, so his folks couldn't get there to water their cattle and their livestock and so forth. So it's a big conflict. So here we see Abraham being open and transparent with Abimelech about the issue between the two. So I think there's a principle here, and the principle is in agreements it is important to be open and forthcoming. Abraham was not so open and forthcoming their first encounter. Now we see Abraham more open and forthcoming in this encounter. So it's important to be transparent, lay your cards on the table basically when you're in the midst of trying to settle a disagreement. So what is Abimelech's response to Abraham concerning this issue? What's that, Mark? He didn't know anything. Abimelech says he didn't know anything about it. It reminds me, if y'all ever watched the TV show Hogan's Heroes, you remember Sergeant Schultz? I know nothing. So I can see Abimelech, saying, I know nothing. So that's what it reminds. So Abimelech saying he doesn't know anything about this. So who comes up with a solution to this issue? Abraham, Debbie says. So why would Abraham initiate the solution? Abraham appears to be the aggrieved party here. He's the one saying Abimelech's servants are blocking access to the well. So why would he come up with the solution?
He'd probably been thinking about it for a while.
Abraham maybe been thinking about it a while. Yeah. Nancy says that Abraham's about to give him some gifts, hopefully that would be a witness to this agreement, that it would prevent it from happening again. Yeah. Abraham's the squatter, yeah. In this day and time, he'd have a lot more rights than Abimelech, wouldn't he? So, but yeah, he's the squatter. But I'm wondering if Abraham initiates this solution because it's a foreshadowing of what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." As believers, we are to initiate peace. As much as sometimes we may not want to, it's really our role to initiate peace. As hard as it may be, it's our role as believers to take the first step toward reconciliation. So what's the solution? Nancy just said part of the solution. What's the solution? What did he give him? What did Abraham give Abimelech? What's that, Debbie? Gave him 7 ewe lambs and what else? ox, sheep, cattle. So it may be that he returned part of what Abimelech had given him previously. So why then, first of all, what's an ewe lamb? Some of you farmers, what's that? A female lamb, so it's a baby sheep. A female lamb, typically younger than a year. So baby sheep, baby female sheep. Okay, so why would Abraham have given 7 of these ewe lambs to Abimelech? Why 7? Why not 10, 5, whatever? 7, Tom says, is a sign of completion, totality, or the whole here. So therefore, with these 7 ewe lambs, Abraham is symbolizing to Abimelech that this is total agreement, total solution, total reconciliation. Our reconciliation is complete between you and me. So why lambs? Why not 7 oxen or 7 whatever? Yeah, that's a good point. Kim raised a good point. Says that they're young female sheep, so they could continue, they could reproduce. So it'd be continuous payment. It would be an ongoing symbol of this reconcilement between Abraham and Abimelech. Good point, Kim.
Well, with lambs, you get a lot of product. You can get clothes, you can get food, you can get milk, you can,
Yeah. Lambs are valuable.
You can't get all that from oxen, so.
Yeah, lambs are valuable because you can get a lot of different products, as Martha said, from them. In John chapter 1, verse 29, it says, "The next day he saw Jesus come to him and said, 'Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world.'" God sent his Son, the Lamb of God, to offer reconcilement, to offer peace to the world. So here again, we may see a foreshadowing of reconcilement, of what reconcilement and peace look like by Abraham, a believer, a type, maybe you might say, of Christ, offering lambs in reconcilement in a offering of peace to Abimelech. So a well becomes the center of the agreement or covenant between Abimelech and Abraham. Where was this well? Where does it say it's located?
Beersheba.
Beersheba. This is the first mention of Beersheba in Genesis in the Bible, but we're going to see through our study of Genesis it is an important place. It's a center of a number of important events in the lives of the patriarchs. And God is alive in this place in Beersheba. So the word Beersheba appears 33 times in the Bible, depending on your translation. 10 of those 33 times are in Genesis. And repeatedly in the scriptures, the term from Dan to Beersheba is mentioned to indicate the northern and southern boundaries of Israel. So here, Abraham is on the southern boundary, Abimelech's on the southern boundary of Israel. All right, Mark, please read Genesis 21:33 through 34.
Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham resided in the land of the Philistines for many days.
All right, so what did Abraham do to commemorate this peace treaty between him and Abimelech? Plants a tree. It says specifically it's a tamarisk tree. And a tamarisk tree is a genus of shrubs and trees. It has feathery pink foliage on it, and it can grow in very harsh conditions, such as, in this case, salt deserts and seashores. So it's a tree that can withstand time. It can withstand the difficulties of the environment. So So why would Abraham plant a tree? Why would he plant a tree to symbolize this agreement or commemorate this peace treaty? Why wouldn't he do something? Sometimes the Israelites would put down rocks, to symbolize, commemorate agreements and things. So he could have done something else. Why a tree? See, everybody see it and watch it grow. Yeah. It keeps reproducing. It probably produces seeds if it's a female tree, right? Planning for the future, Jeanette says. Okay. Abraham, as we go on through this study, or have been through this study, Abraham is not a car guy or a chariot guy. He's a tree guy. So when we look at Abraham's life, a lot of things in his life are related to trees. So Abraham, when he first stopped in Canaan, it was by a tree. Genesis chapter 12, verse 6. He later built an altar at Mamre by a tree. Genesis 13:18. He entertained the 3 visitors under a tree. Genesis 18:1. And he lived near trees. Genesis 14:13. So in a land of little shade, in a desert-type land, as such, he planted a tamarisk tree as a special place, perhaps there also under those branches to meet with God, as he had done the 3 visitors previously. So there he called upon the Lord by a very special name. In verse 33 there, read what verse 33 again, please, Mark.
Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God.
All right, so here we see that Abraham refers to God as the everlasting God. He plants a tree to commemorate this. A lot of Abraham's life is around a tree. So when we think about eternal significance, the everlasting God, and trees, what comes to mind? What's that? The cross. Eternal life for us, the sacrifice of Jesus on a tree. The roots go deep. So go on with that, Novella. That's good. Yeah. Novella says the roots of a tree go deep, and it symbolizes in a believer's life that God's presence in our life goes deep, like roots to the tree. All right, so here, it's another first here in Genesis. We'll close with this question. There's another first in Genesis 21:33. What is this first? It's the first time God is called the everlasting God, or the eternal God. In Hebrew, it's El Olam. El Olam, O-L-A-M, El Olam. And it's used 439 times in the Bible, this name for God. And in this by planting this tree here, this tamarisk tree, Abraham is setting up a commemorative, a memorial. In his case, it's a physical tree. In our lives, though, I think that how we should think about it is what commemoratives, what memorials are we placing in our lives to commemorate experiences with God, the everlasting God? What are we doing? Certainly, hopefully, one of them, at least mentally, is your salvation experience. Hopefully, that's a memorial in your head, if nowhere else, that you recall, that you can look back on this time God was the everlasting God in your life. Yep, Nancy. Yeah. Nancy says when she's witnessing to someone and they accept Jesus as their Savior, she tells them to write on a piece of paper that day, and I don't know if she said this, that experience profession of faith. So when Satan attacks and says you didn't really accept Christ, it's not real in your life, you can pull out that piece of paper. I've heard people doing the same thing except writing it in their Bibles themselves. Write the date of your salvation in the front of your Bible and maybe some remarks about the occurrence, what occurred. So next week, we're going to go down a side road. I know you're shocked, Kim. But we're going to go down a side road and look at some names of God, some Hebrew names of God used in the Bible, such as El Olam. Okay, so we'll pick up here next week, look at some other names of God used in the Bible, their meaning, their application, where that name first appears in the Bible. Okay? All right, with that, y'all have a blessed week. Thank you for being here. Good conversation, discussion today.